This is an intro. Intro.
Hustle and Flow Chart with your boy,
My boy,
Matt Wolf and Joe Fair.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Hustle and Flow Chart podcast. This is Joe Fear.
This is Matt Wolf.
Yay! And today we have an old friend of ours named David Sinick. And this guy is definitely the smartest SEO mind. He's content marketing guru at this point, running a massive platform at Paleohacks.com, which, I mean, it's totally in a different niche from anything we've ever played with, but at the end of the day, you are going to have a masterclass or a playbook or whatever the hell you want to call. You have a roadmap of specific points of how to do content marketing for any business.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the end of this episode, you'll have a good idea of how to run content marketing and SEO on your site so that Google actually pays attention to your site and sends traffic to you. Literally, he kind of unloads all of it, everything you can think of around content marketing and SEO. Some of the stuff we're doing, a lot of it we haven't done. So even us, we're like, we've got so many takeaways we're going to do in our business from this.
And here's the cool thing. Anyone can do this because we're talking about free tactics. Free tactics. We're not talking about paid advertising at all. We're not even talking about things that you have to do on other websites. It's all things that you do on your own website.
Yeah. And
that's what's beautiful about this whole topic. So everyone has basically the rights to use everything that we talk about in this podcast.
Yeah,
and you should.
He is a ninja with this stuff. And let's go ahead and dive right in with Mr. David Sinick.
Voila.
All right. Hey, David. Thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to share my information with you guys today, and looking forward to just having fun.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
so, it's interesting because Joe and we are hardcore focused on content marketing. That's sort of our number one traffic driver. It's it's been the main focus of our business. We even had a content marketing agency for a while, but then we realized we really don't like doing it for other people. But we've never really had an episode where we've really dived into content marketing and why you should focus on content marketing and how to do it, and all of the stuff that goes around content marketing. So that's why we're really pumped on this, because I can't think of anybody better to talk about content marketing than you. So
Wow.
I'm excited to talk about this. But before we do, let's do a little bit of a backstory. I want to know sort of what you did before you're doing what you do now, and kind of how you got to where you're at right now.
Okay. Well, I've been working on the internet, the interwebs in some capacity or another since about 2009. In college, I wanted to be a personal trainer, and so I signed up for a guy's email list named Eric Cressy, who got me on Ryan Lee's email list, who, if anybody is not familiar, in 2010, 2009, Ryan is kind of responsible for the growth of the fitness marketing information business way back in the day. And in 2010, he was one of the top dogs in the internet marketing space, and he still is. And long story short, the same way you didn't want to do content marketing for other people because you just like doing it for yourself, I decided I just like working out. I don't like training other people. So one of Eric Cressy's emails on his newsletter was like, oh, you got to follow this guy, Ryan Lee, if you want to do anything in online business. And so I went to one of his events, and I emailed him in advance because I wanted to intern for him, and also because the event was in Stamford, Connecticut, which is where I'm from. And I also, as a side note, couldn't believe anybody would ever host an event in Stamford. But it's funny because Stanford is actually a totally legit place, but it was my hometown. So it's like a weird thing to think that anybody else would like the hometown. It's kind of like that. You grow up and you just hate where you grew up.
Right.
Well, we live in San Diego, so,
It's hard to hate it here.
It's hard to hate our hometown. But
I probably would not have that same vibe if I grew up in SoCal. But I showed up. I interned with him for a bit. He introduced me to my first local SEO client, and a couple of other local clients in the New Canaan area. Through that, I bought a food drop shipping business, which was a complete and total utter disaster. Let's just say all the money that I had saved up at the time disappeared into a black hole called Magento. If anybody here has worked with Magento, the platform. You'll understand what I'm talking about. And then I got behind the scenes with a guy named John Romanello in the fitness space, launched a New York Times bestseller, worked in the women's and men's dating space with a guy named Adam Gilad. And then Paleohacks fell into my lap in 2013. And it just happened that I was working with somebody who knew the guy who owned Paleohacks. And he needed help turning me into a real business. He contracted with me and my group of guys to turn it into a real business. Fast forward about a year or so, he decided he wanted to just work with me directly, so I took that. Fast forward a year after that, I brokered a deal between him and the current majority owner of Paleohacks, who is a guy named Mike Geary. And so Mike and I are partners in Paleohacks. And then we also own Paleo Plan as well, which is a partner site that has a meal planning subscription service.
Got it. Now, Mike Geary, he's the Truth About Abs guy, right? He was.
Oh yeah.
He had
One year trick.
Yeah, for the longest time, I think that was the #1 selling product on ClickBank. I think
for a long time.
For a long time.
Yeah, like, he was crushing.
He like the domination he had in that space, like, doesn't really exist anymore. You know, like, he was basically the first guy to come to. Mike is like a math savant. Like, he's the smartest math person I've ever met in my life. And he was one of the first guys to crack cold traffic for info products, or at least in the fitness world at the time, and just destroyed it forever. For like 4 years straight. Imagine like getting an offer to maximum scale and then just keeping that running for 4 years at that level. Like, that's basically what was happening for him. So It worked out really well. Worked out really well.
No, I think when we first connected, it was in Washington, D.C. I think it was one of Yannick's underground events.
Yep.
Yes.
And I think at the time, didn't you have an SEO agency?
Yeah, that was probably, so there was two. It's funny because I met Mike in person for the first time at that event too.
Wow.
Before I was on his radar at all. And we had like the most awkward conversation of all time. But yeah, I had an SEO agency back then. And that was also when I was still doing the food drop shipping. So yeah, I was probably trying to sell you guys or somebody else on hiring us for SEO services.
Yeah, we didn't hire you anyway. But we're still friends.
Well, I think you were flying back to San Diego at the time, I remember, because we all like got people to rearrange their seats so we can all sit next to each other and chat about SEO on the flight home.
I think I remember
I remember talking about it in the car on the way to the airport, I feel like.
Yeah, I think I was very hungover on that drive. Or I remember in the van like, oh.
Yeah, that sounds like the events back in those days.
Yeah, times have changed. Yeah, man. I mean, it's so Paleohacks. So it's basically just the two of you guys. You have a team. What kind of team are you guys working with?
So I have a couple full-time employees. We've got Charisma, who is my editor-in-chief of our content marketing operation, and she basically runs the entire show. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, like, she's got it.
Wow.
And then she has an associate editor named Lauren, and Lauren helps Charisma do all the stuff that she does, helps edit content, helps, format stuff. She helps with guest posting and syndication, some other special projects. We've got Zoe, who manages our social media entirely. We have Spencer, who does our video content, she's basically Steven Spielberg or James Cameron or whatever is appropriate for the editing side of stuff. We've got, who else is on my team? Jill is my marketing manager. She's our newest hire this summer. She's just been absolutely doing amazing work for me. I think like a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck trying to hire like a clone of themselves. And I'm fortunate that I think I found that person, which has been really good. And then we've got customer service. I'm trying to think who else I'm probably forgetting. Oh, and we've got Rita, who does all of our numbers and
analytics and things.
Very cool.
We've got a bunch of other contractors we work with, but those are the main thing. The next person we're hiring is a full-time developer. That's probably the next focus for us. Strong need.
So with Paleohacks, what's sort of the business model behind there? What are the revenue streams and what is that business?
Yeah, I would say that the revenue streams are essentially 3 or 4 things. One is our selling of our own products, and that's through our internal email list, through our own organic traffic, through advertising on Facebook, and through affiliates if I didn't say that already. Secondly is affiliate marketing, which is less and less of our business these days. So I'm trying to get it to be less. But one of the good things actually about that is that the reason why I'm trying to get it to be less is because I want to sell less other information products. And I wanted to just focus on super complementary offers to what we sell, since we sell cookbooks. But there's all these new physical products and food items coming out that have actual good direct response marketing around them. So like I can sell an olive oil, an avocado oil, salt, a set of chef's knives, all stuff that's like super aligned with my business that I would never sell. So affiliate marketing, because there's more and more of those products coming out every month, it seems, is still a strong part of our business and our revenue model. And then the third part of our model, I think it's just 3 pieces, is advertising revenue. And that is through our AdSense on our blog, through sponsored content, and through sponsored emails where people rent our list to promote a product. And that has become a huge part of our business model pretty rapidly, and that's been really good for us.
Right on, man.
Yeah, that's interesting. With the advertising model, that what kind of traffic do you have to get to a site for that advertising model to be viable?
It's a good question. Like it used to be, I think, like I'm like opening up my analytics to like take a look, but I think like it's less about the quantifiable number and more about, I mean, this is common obviously, and I hate to give you this answer, but it's more about like the quality. So like, just as a comparison, so for Paleohacks, where's my blog? I'm trying to find it in analytics. For Paleohacks, we're getting almost 2 million visitors a month. Here it is, for the blog. And I can, that makes us anywhere from like 20 to 40K in AdSense a month, depending on how much email traffic we're getting to the blog. I think also, well, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that like that we have a ton of traffic, but I would say that for certain markets where it's like, for example, your guys' space, which is more like B2B, selling money at a discount sort of deal, you can probably make more money on advertising much faster than I could because of the types of products that are being sold and whatnot.
Right.
Like my girlfriend, for example, has a 11,000 person following on Instagram, and she's making money from doing sponsored stuff on there right off the bat. So I would say you could start pretty early. I think it's less about the quantifiable traffic. I guess what I'm trying to make is it's less about the quantifiable traffic and more the influence you have over that traffic. So I would say, like, honestly, this revenue per visitor for us is probably lower than the average person with the advertising model, partly because advertising came later in our kind of schematic, and it's also not our main focus. So like if you look at the AdSense banners on our blog, for example, they could probably be in better positions to make us more money. But the second part of that is that like we don't have as much influence, I think, with our content as a personal brand would. And so we command lower prices, or I can only charge lower prices for like sponsored articles and stuff than maybe like a Katie, the wellness mama of the world could, because people like nobody really knows who Dave Sinick is at Paleohacks.
Right.
It's more just about Paleohacks itself. Whereas if it was the Dave Sinick show, then whenever I say something, it's that much stronger.
Sure.
Am I making sense?
Yeah. It's a personal brand rather than kind of this big umbrella company.
Yeah. And so we do well with advertising, but if we were a personal brand, we probably could have done it much earlier on in the game and potentially more profitable per visitor. I think AdSense is still really good though. Like, believe it or not, I thought AdSense was a joke, and then we put it up and we were making like anywhere from $6 to $10 per 1,000 visitors. And that's like, honestly, I think you could probably even beat that with a little bit of optimization. So
that's amazing. Yeah. I think everybody's head was in the camp of like, it's dead. That was so like 10 years ago.
Yeah, we haven't even experimented with
back, right?
That's cool. So I'm just curious now. I know you had some chats with Matt recently, but I want to know what your platform looks like, and maybe just explain what your platform is, what that means to you, and kind of your philosophy when you're building out all this big content plays.
So our platform overall, just like in terms of the assets, I guess, are, we've got Paleohacks and Paleo Plan, which combined get close to 3 million visitors, I want to say, somewhere in that range. We've got an email list of about 500 to 600,000 people, depending on who we're suppressing at any given time. We've got Facebook fan page of like 850,000 people on Paleohacks and like 300,000 on Paleo Plan, or might be slightly less. Instagram, decent sized on both. Twitter, I don't care. Pinterest is almost 100,000 on Paleohacks and much smaller on Paleo Plan. That's kind of our quantifiable platform if that's what you're looking for.
Sure.
And I've already forgotten your second question.
What was it? Yeah. Oh, it was kind of your philosophy when you're building this out.
Oh, yeah. So, I looked, when I first came into the paleo world, I was looking around and everyone was getting a ton of traffic through blogging and content. And it was usually like this, I'm about to make myself sound like a total asshole. Just get ready for it. Basically like, there was a lot of bloggers, and they weren't business people. They were bloggers that were doing this because there was some business aspect of it. But for me personally, if you're not like a raging capitalist like I am, I usually think you're just in business to boost your ego, and that's kind of what I felt. Yeah. So what I saw was people who got SEO but didn't really get the business side of it, and I felt like that was a big opportunity for me to come in and just kind of kick people out, basically. Just come in and kick some ass, which is kind of what we did. And so, at first, for a couple of years, our content was just getting crushed in the sense of we weren't able to compete in Google because we were a newer site. Our blog didn't get built to 2013, whereas some of these other paleo blogs were built in like 06, 07, et cetera. So it took us a little while to get off the ground. We are now very dominant if you look up any paleo keywords, but, it certainly took a little bit. And my philosophy in getting to that point was like, okay, I'm going to come in and here's what I'm going to do. Number one is I'm going to create better content than anybody in this space on every topic that exists. So it's going to be, my recipes are going to be way better. I mean, at a certain point, you kind of like a recipe is a recipe.
Sure.
But still, ours are the best. We're going to have, whenever it's informative, informational content, it's going to be best in class. Like it's going to solve whatever the problem is. If someone has a thyroid condition and they come to our article about thyroid conditions, it's going to be as comprehensive as possible. And from a user perspective and also from an SEO perspective, we're going to make sure our content is very shareable because I'm not going to be a one-trick pony and only rely on SEO traffic, but also because social media feeds into it. And then how I'm really going to dominate people in this space is, aside from just creating the best content possible, following SEO practices, following good social media practices, and using our email list as a leverage point to drive traffic to our content to help boost it quickly. I'm also going to win in the operations front, which is to say that like nobody in the paleo space, as far as I know, has an editorial team. Like they might say they have like a team, but it's like one person who's doing the job. Like we have an actual, and this isn't, saying this isn't always that good. Like having a staff doesn't necessarily mean that you have a great company, but we have a staff and we are able to create an output at a level that most of our competitors can no longer keep up with. It's just because we've built a better operational thing and we've also made more money to invest in it. So, I hope that answers the question of philosophy. I'm just trying to be the best.
There's nothing wrong with that.
That makes sense. So I kind of want to dive into the sort of strategical elements of it a little bit. So when it comes to the content marketing plan for Paleohacks, what sort of frequency do you focus on? How long do you try to make the posts? Can you give us any sort of those sort of details about how the systems work there?
Yes, totally. We post for this month. We've cut down to one a day because, and this is something I can dig in a little bit more. We've been doing a content audit for like probably 2 years now. Wow. But we're almost done. And the prompt, like basically, I encouraged my team to get us up to 3 posts a day, and we did that in November. But like this audit was kind of just sitting there, and I'm like, we have so much. Basically, like we didn't always have the best quality or the quality standards that we have now. And so one of the things that we did as soon as we started getting comfortable in the higher level of quality is go back and revamp all of our old content to make it kind of fit our quality standards and also update it for SEO and all that sort of stuff. So right now we're doing one post a day for this month to kind of give my team some more time to finish up the audit, because essentially the audit is like, it's revamping old content, but in terms of how much work it is, it's basically the same thing as creating that content from scratch or redoing it from scratch. So essentially it's still producing the same amount of content. Then in January, we're going to scale back up to 3 a day, because also January is our biggest month. So yeah, we're doing about 3 a day.
So when you say content audit, just to interject on that point, so you're going through your old content and trying to figure out what stuff is kind of outdated and needs some updating, and reworking it, kind of deciding whether it's worth updating, worth deleting, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So our content is 99% of the time is evergreen. So when I'm looking back at old content, I'm not looking for like, oh, turns out we were wrong. Like salt is bad for you. Or like, turns out the whole paleo diet's a lie. It's more of like, is this article as thorough enough as it could have been? Is it formatted properly? Are there good subheadlines, subtitles, images? Is there like a pinnable graphic? So basically like what I do is I have a spreadsheet, and in the spreadsheet, the columns are the name of the article, the URL of the article, the keyword that article is focused on, or keywords. And then the next column is like an actions column. So like what you're going to do. So that's either essentially the article is being, worst case scenario, the article is getting deleted because it's just useless. If it's good enough, but it could be, to stay on the website. And like, for example, I would delete an article that was, like, for example, if I did a blog post about a contest in 2015, that article gets deleted.
Right.
Pretty much everything else, though, gets redirected to a more relevant article. So if I had we had 7 articles on sleeping better, and I think 6 of them, they were like redundant. So 6 of them went, and we redirected them all to a main sleeping article. So, and then the other things in that column are essentially no changes, or like redo from scratch. And then you can, if you were auditing, you could obviously add in different things there. And then outside of that, the other columns in the sheet are essentially the specific things I'm auditing for, which is, if the photos need updating, if schema is set up properly, if the SEO metadata is set up properly or needs updating, if there's interlinking, if the content is long enough, if the content is already ranking or not. Actually, sorry, those aren't the columns. That isn't the column thing. That's actually a separate piece of evaluating. What else is there? Formatting. If there's any formatting issues, how it looks on mobile, for example, because that was not a strong consideration for us initially. And then if it has all the necessary marketing elements that we add to these pages, which is lead boxes, call to action graphics, AdSense, a pop-up, all that sort of stuff. And so we go through all of our content, which was like 1,300 articles, and review each one of those things. And then there's an action step that happens. And then we then go through and put that into our publishing workflow. So like Lauren, our associate editor, goes and does the actual review, lists out all the things that need to be changed, and then that gets put into the publishing workflow, where then someone, one of the writers or Charisma or whoever, will go in and actually make the changes and then republish the article and relaunch it.
Got it. Now, is this like an SEO benefit thing? Because I feel like most people out there that have blogs, once it's out there, they just kind of leave it alone, and it's just old content, and they assume nobody's looking at it. What's the benefit of going and doing all that?
There's an enormous benefit. So there's a few things. So first off, a lot of our old content was starting to rank and had decent social performance, but it was never going to like really rank. So like by starting to rank, I mean like it was in position 30 to 50 or something, right? So at that point I'm saying like, okay, Google is giving me something for this, but it's been a couple years. It wasn't enough. So I'm going to go back and flesh out that article and make it better, because I know it has the potential to rank higher than 30 to 50. I mean, I already know Google is saying it's acceptable to rank. Right. Now, if a piece of content didn't rank at all, and it was like from 2015, then I can probably just scrap it entirely and start over. But usually, like I'm looking at if it's kind of ranking and then revamping it, and also a similar kind of thought on the social performance. And yes, long story short, it helps SEO performance immensely. immensely. And it's not just the content specific stuff, but just like auditing your site overall, like site speed stuff makes a huge difference. The one thing I would say to anybody who's listening on content audits, aside from doing it yourself and following kind of a simple process of reviewing stuff, obviously the less content you have, the easier it is. If you were looking for someone to do an SEO specific audit, which often overlaps with the content audit, the guy that you want to hire is named Alan Bleiweiss. That's Bleiweiss. So if we're talking about SEO benefits, right, we did our content audit first, which when Alan then did his audit, one of the things he looks at is content quality. And he's like, man, your site has really good content, but everything else you're fucking up on. so everything else is terrible. So he did an SEO audit for us. And so combined with the quality of content we were putting out and the changes he suggested us to make, which really was more on the technical side. So the biggest thing being we increased our site speed a lot. Our SEO traffic quintupled. And I'm not talking about we went from 5,000 visitors a month to 25, which would actually be great. It was 150,000 visitors a month to 650,000.
Dear God.
So, yes, that is to say that auditing your stuff is enormously beneficial because Google's kind of measuring the average quality of your content. And if you have if you just recently, for example, started publishing really epic shit, but for the last 6 years you were not, those pieces of poor, content will, drag you down.
Yeah.
So we want to keep kind of the average content quality level as high as possible. And also because we have that content, it's an asset to us. We might as well leverage it properly. Otherwise it's just sitting there,
Got it. So, all right. So right now you're focused on about 1 post a day, but you're going to shift it back to 3 posts a day. Is that based on sort of testing and you've seen that frequency is what performs the best for traffic, or how did you come to that conclusion that this is how much content we should be putting out?
You say it as if I had a real process with that. It was more I didn't like 1 a day. We did 2 a day for a bit. And then I was like, we could probably do 3 a day and it wouldn't be a problem. And so there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to ramp it up. I won't say, yeah, we posted 3 a day and we doubled our AdSense revenue. I don't actually know if there's a correlation. I haven't done a strong analysis. And I think there's other factors aside from just producing more content, what the content is, how it's being promoted and so on as to how it gets affected. But, I would say that, oh my God, I'm totally losing my train of thought.
Do you see a strong correlation between frequency and traffic? If you're on days where you post 3 posts, do you see a spike in traffic on those days? I mean, are you able to work out a correlation?
Not necessarily. It's basically it gives. The reason why I create 3 posts a day is because if we promoted it all properly, which we're still kind of figuring it out, but if we promoted it all equal, then yes, it would definitely boost our overall traffic because it's just more content. It's more stuff that we're posting on Facebook, more stuff that we're emailing about. The other reason why I want more content is because when I'm doing my newsletter, I'm often including multiple articles, and I start to run out of articles to promote if we're not producing enough content. And then the other big thing that's kind of a leverage point for us is that we own everything that is created in our content. So, one of the things I was telling Charisma, my editor-in-chief, in regards to the 3 posts per day, I think 2 of those are recipes. And so because we own our recipes, whenever I create a new recipe book, I can just say, hey, Zoe or whoever, can you go to the blog and curate me 70 crock pot recipes?
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
If they're there, it takes all of 20 minutes for her to get the URLs, give it to our designer, and next thing we know, we have a crock pot cookbook.
Nice.
But again, if we're public, basically we started doing that a lot. And when it's at a certain point, you're every recipe book is overlapping dramatically. So I wanted to make sure that we were killing 2 birds with 1 stone by producing more content, not just because there is benefits of it in terms of more stuff to promote, but also because we use that content for other purposes as well. And I wanted to get as far ahead of the curve as possible.
Got it.
I have a question about, because we did a lot and we still do a lot of content repurposing. So taking the content one and then just distributing all sorts of platforms. Do you guys do that?
The only repurposing that we do is the recipe books, like I was mentioning.
That was pretty dang smart. I like that.
And then
I guess in terms of inward traffic to help with SEO and referral links and all that stuff.
So just for an example, when we make a new blog post, what I'll typically do is I'll take that blog post and maybe like a week later, I'll take that same content and put it on medium.com with a link back to our site. And then a week later after that, I'll put it on like LinkedIn Pulse. And then we'll actually have that content converted into a PDF and put it on SlideShare and Issue and Speaker Deck. And so one piece of content ends up getting spread to 15 different platforms that all link back to our site.
I'll be totally honest with you. I am not against that strategy, but I've never really had a lot of success with that sort of approach. I think it also depends on the market that you're in. Like obviously, like, I don't know, for example, like you guys have LinkedIn's blogging tool, like you're discussing, as a channel that, you know, and Medium as well, which is both places that have very relevant audiences for you. I guess I could post some of my stuff on Medium, but I think the paleo space doesn't quite, and I get that it's not just reaching audiences. It's also like from a, like, you know, if something happens, someone will cross it. Why not?
Yeah.
But there isn't quite that sort of, website like LinkedIn's blogging for paleo, other than Facebook. Like Facebook is where the vast majority of our audience lives. And so I don't care as much about like the slide shares and the you know, distributing it like that, as much as just really honing in on the key channels, which is Facebook and also Pinterest as well for us. So we strongly focus on those platforms. And so like in regards to that, like we, it's not repurposing, but we highly focus our content around those platforms. So like every article we have has multiple photos that people can use as well, actually, I guess you can't really do this anymore with meta tags, but essentially, theoretically, there's multiple photos that someone could use as their cover photo when they are posting, or the big photo image when they're sharing our content on Facebook. And then Pinterest stuff, we have a pinnable collage image or a pinnable instructor graphic at the bottom of every post to encourage people to pin our content more.
Nice.
So that's not repurposing as much, but in terms of like building our content for other channels, we do that. There was a period of time where I got the bright idea to take some of our more popular articles and have them turned into podcast episodes. And back when we had a podcast, the podcasts are a total waste of time, by the way, guys. I don't know what you're doing, but back when we had a podcast, having also what I called article casts boosted our total listens like a lot, because a lot of this was evergreen content. So like it was just like a regular article about like autoimmune disease or whatever, and then the author did a voiceover. But I stopped doing it because I didn't really see, aside from, well, first off, because we stopped podcasting overall, so there was no extra benefit from it eventually, but I just didn't see much from it. So I just focus on the kind of the key platforms, which are Facebook and Pinterest.
That's interesting. And it's definitely a niche to niche kind of thing, because
totally.
Like when it comes to podcasting in our business, I think the podcasting is probably the highest leveraged thing that we do as far as networking and driving traffic and, you know, a lot of that kind of stuff. So for us, the podcasting is probably like the highest level stuff that produces the most results for us. Which
we had a killer podcast, honestly. Clark, our host, was amazing, but it was our least popular content for some reason, even though I thought it was our best stuff. Like Clark didn't mess around, but I think it's also like Paleo world is, aside from blogging being kind of the medium of a lot of people, podcasting was a huge part. And I just felt like we didn't give our podcast as much support as it could have used. Right. Whatever it was. But,
so when it comes to your blog posts and the content you actually put on the blog, what are some of the best practices you follow as far as, you know, what sort of things does the post need to have? You know, starting with what's the common length of a post, and then also what sort of things do you make sure it has as far as, like, you know, a certain number of H1 tags and images? Do you follow any sort of best practices for that kind of thing?
I would say there's a lot of best practices. So the first thing that you should know is that I have a manual for my own internal team, and then also for our writers, that's like 30 plus pages long, that walks them through every single thing. So when people come and write for us, they have to read that. Like you will not write for us if you don't read that shit. I won't tolerate it. So I'll run through kind of the list of stuff. I mean, a lot of these are just going to be on-site SEO factors, but then I'll talk about some more specific stuff to us. So First off, length of the content, we go for 1,000 plus words. For recipes, I'm a little bit more flexible on that. So it's like 750 words or so. At a certain point, you've said enough about a fucking chicken cacciatore recipe. I mean, like, yeah, like, and I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure in our writer's guide where we say like, and include a 150 to 250 word introduction, there's probably something in there that says like, just bullshit your way through it. Like, God, I don't like, you know, I just like, I don't know what to say. Like, oh my God, this recipe's tasty. Here it is. And then you say it like 6 more times and then the recipe. But, anyway, so longer content on the actual informative articles. And I do think there's a point of diminishing returns where, like, I think longer content almost always ranks better, but I'd imagine once you get above like 4,000 to 5,000 words, depending on the market. But I mean, like health, you start to run out of people's attention. And I think there's a certain point of diminishing returns where it stops getting as good share traction and whatnot. So we try to keep the upper limit at like 2,500, I would say. So you have your keyword in the title, the URL, and in the post content. That's just a very small piece. You have your meta title and description tags. And that's for Google, for Facebook. And I think Yoast has a Pinterest section. I forget. I'm not in there these days, but we have a different meta title. This is important to note. We have a different meta title and description for Google than we do with Facebook, because with Google, obviously people are searching for stuff. So essentially, if they're searching for how to fix my thyroid disease, the headline being how to fix my thyroid disease or something that's very specific to their question is going to be better than what it would be on Facebook, which would be like very much a curiosity based click, because people on Facebook are just there because they're taking a poop or something. They stumble across your stuff. So Yoast lets you do different ones for each platform. And that's good. We try to include media when appropriate on our content. That's video, audio, and images. I mean, every piece of content you'll see on our site has multiple photos usually. Audio is less often these days. And then video, we layer that in if an article performs well, like if it gets a good amount of shares over, I wish I could give you like an exact number, but it's kind of by feel a little bit. If an article performs well on social and email, we'll add in a video and embed that into the article as well. Cause I think, well, for a couple of reasons. One, because there's no way YouTube is not being rewarded, or sorry, there's no way Google is not rewarding people for embedding YouTube videos in their content.
That makes sense.
People engaged. We get passive YouTube traffic and subscribers from it. And it's just good. So we do that. We have recipe schema. And I would encourage anybody listening to this who has food content to, if they're not doing schema, look into this. It's a very technical conversation, and I honestly would have a hard time explaining it, but essentially it's code that goes around your recipe content and also other types of content to help Google distinguish what that content is. And by making Google's life easier, Google will reward you.
Are you talking about like, let's say I go on Google and I search like how to tie a tie, right? Yeah. And the first thing that pops up is like a little gray box that says like step 1, do this, step 2. And that's like pulled from somebody's website.
Yes, those are the search snippets, and that's what schema lets you do. If you don't have schema, Google will never put you up there. If you do have schema, you give yourself the opportunity to be in that position.
Cool. Got it.
So you can get more traffic.
The money spot. Yeah.
Okay. Social sharing, that's not really, that's after the fact. Interlinking, so we link to multiple other posts that are relevant on our site internally. We also link out to sources and authoritative websites that are relevant. This is not, and then 3 other things I would say that are extremely important, but not necessarily in the editorial process are making sure your site is secure. That happened in October. I think that Google is like all in on SSL certificates now. So if your site is not HTTPS yet, you should get on that. Secondly, mobile friendly. Again, that is actually something we check for every time we publish a piece of content, because depending on the formatting, it can look weird on a phone. But in general, like, has to be good on mobile. And then site speed, which is more of a holistic thing. As I mentioned earlier, that was a huge part of what we do. A huge part of our growth in traffic. And so then beyond that, in terms of like the marketing layer that we put over that, and also like, I'm not going to talk about like how to write a great sentence or a great paragraph or anything like that, but charisma takes care of all that. So like by default, assume when I'm talking about this, that our content is like well written,
stellar,
and thought out and all that stuff. the other piece of this, where is my note here, is the marketing layer. So here's what we also add in to monetize our content. There's an ad unit at the bottom of every piece of content that's essentially we have like 25 high converting text links that all rotate into a unit of like 4 or 5 of them. And so that was a custom plugin that we built. So that's below each article. That generates a good amount of extra money. Every piece of content has 3 AdSense banners, though right now you probably won't see them because I made a boo-boo and we're getting unsuspended due to my incompetence. Just basically had a tech issue that got us in trouble with them that I just missed. Anyway, but those will be up hopefully by the time this is published. We have a specific relevant call to action at the bottom of every article that I think we do it manually sometimes, but for the most part, we've actually built, using our tagging in WordPress, a system so that the call to action graphics get put in, what's it called? By tag. So I can do it in bulk. Every article has a lead box that is related to the content at hand. So if it's coconut flour recipe, I've got a coconut flour recipe free report. I guess it's more of like a free cookbook. Each one of those lead boxes then has a specific thank you page for that lead box and ideally a specific relevant offer on it. Eventually, I'll be building out autoresponder sequences around those, but it hasn't been like a big priority just yet. Every article, I'm like 95% sure this is like 100% implemented, but we're probably still QAing it, is along with a custom lead box on each article, I also just started doing a custom pop-up on each article. So instead of it being the Paleo for Beginners guide pop-up on every single article on our site, if it is a coconut flour recipe, it's a coconut flour recipe pop-up. If it is a thyroid article, it's our thyroid, thyroid condition free report pop-up, and so on and so forth. And then, as we were discussing before, the next step for us on this is to start to actually do stuff with pixeling, retargeting, and using Facebook traffic on that as well, which we have not quite dug into. We're starting to. I realized the other day that a lot of our boosted content was getting like 3 to 5 cent clicks, and so you better believe that's a big focus of ours this month, so that we can capitalize on it in January.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you could totally target any relevant affiliate offers that way, or other, opt-ins. With those retargeting.
And we also do a lot with Google search. We actually get way cheaper clicks with Google search ads than we do with Facebook ads, which is bizarre to me that not more people are talking about Google ads, and Facebook ads are the hot topic for everybody, because Google ads are like where we get all of our cheap clicks from.
And that is to content?
To content, yeah.
And I think that's like an important point to make to anybody listening in terms of like the why content marketing. Like, there's all sorts of alternative benefits from this. And I actually want to share something on email marketing with you guys that's kind of an important piece too. And I think a lot of people look at content marketing and they're like, well, why not just do a sales funnel where I know I'll make money back immediately, right? And because content marketing is a much more long-term approach. And for some people, that's not good. For me, I'm a long-term guy. I'm planning on being this in a while. So building a blog and a platform and a brand asset like this was worth it to me. But also, as we were just discussing about the article, like running ads to content, like 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more, that probably would not be a conversation we were having. It'd be like running an ad to an article. Like, are you insane? Like, what are you doing? Or actually, I bet there's people listening that like were doing Taboola stuff back then and like, actually I was doing that for real. Yeah. But anyway, long story short is that like, it's the advertising world and online marketing world gets more and more competitive every week. And being able to use your content as a tool in advertising gives you a ton of flexibility. So not only does it give me flexibility in that, like, I don't have to worry about compliance with Facebook as much in terms of like sending people directly to a sales page, right? Like that's like the gold standard. That's kind of what you're shooting for, but it's hard because A, it's hard to get the traffic to convert, but it's also B, you have to write your copy in a way that's totally compliant for Facebook. And so when you're sending people to content instead, it does seem like there's a lot more flexibility. And it's also, you get cheaper clicks, as we're talking about. Sending traffic to a sales page is not going to do as well on Facebook in terms of like the organic engagement that you get out of that as opposed to an article. So we have this lower back stretches article that somehow got 131,000 shares on Facebook.
Wow.
And, using that as a boosted post, the amount of organic traction that's getting, it just kind of piggybacks into the ad itself and gets me more traffic overall, as opposed to like my sales page. I'm not going to get as many people sharing and talking about it. Right. So it's a huge benefit from that, among the other things. And each piece of content to me is like an annuity. It's a little investment that like I hope makes me $1 to $2 a day. And I hope that I can continue to add an extra $1 or $2 a day, every day. And then also throughout the year, optimize our content so that $1 becomes like $1.50 per article, right? Through better marketing practices.
Yeah. It's interesting. We actually don't look at our ad spend on a per article basis or a per, we look at our whole ad spend in aggregate, right? We look at the whole ad spend on a month, how many sales we made from that ad spend as a whole. We don't look at any one individual ad. We do go in and optimize, and the stuff that's getting really crappy cost per clicks and stuff like that will phase out. But for the way we do a lot of our traffic is cold traffic pretty much always goes to content. Any sort of cold traffic, the Google search traffic, Facebook ad traffic to cold audiences, that's all going to content, right? And then anything that's an offer, any sort of affiliate promo we're doing, any of our products that we used to sell, our consulting, any of that type of stuff, that's purely retargeting. So we use the content to sort of segment people into, what the right offer is. And then we use just purely retargeting when we're pushing people into offers. And that's how we look at it.
I love that strategy. And it's something that we're definitely getting into. One of the kind of issues that one of the things that I've done kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily wrong, it just makes my life a little bit more complicated, is we cover so many different topics that I have like 25 different lead magnets, for example, on my site. And so I've done this thing where I've over complexified that process, but we'll have to clean that up next year. But that's a huge thing I'm definitely interested in, because again, like, it was very easy for us to get 3 to 5 cent clicks to content, and Facebook traffic is good quality. So it's just a matter of making that kind of ROI. But, again, like, kind of like what you were alluding to too, is like, it's also not always about like that day zero earnings. You know what I mean? Like, you're looking at it over the course of a month and building a real, program with it, as opposed to just just a money making advertisement or something.
It's all about the platform. Like we've used that word multiple times throughout this episode, but it's all about building the platform more so than making the sale right now.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is going to continue to be the direction that we go. I mean, like, I am fortunate that we have a ad campaign for our dessert cookbook, selling our dessert cookbook directly, that is profitable. And that's been really good. But like, essentially it's tenuous, like every day I'm waiting for us to get shut down. Mm-hmm. But for our content stuff, like, that's just never on my radar. It's not even a concern, because it's just that's what Facebook is promoting right now, it seems. Right. And it's just what people like better.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I guess going back to content management, and obviously when you start doing this, it's probably going to be in that whole mix too. But I think I kind of know this answer, but I want to just lay it out here. What kind of tools and processes are you using to actually execute things day to day? Writing content and kind of the whole motions.
Yeah, well, first off, it's important that everybody knows that I don't write anything ever. I am sure that we're very much a magazine style, and I have no part in the content marketing process these days, aside from suggesting ideas, adding in the marketing aspects of it. But in terms of the topics, and like, I made the mistake a few times of like being like, oh, charisma, I don't think I like that idea. I don't think it's going to do as well, but we'll give it a shot. And then it like crushes. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to shut my mouth and let her do her job, which is usually a good thing to go when you have an A player. But so here's how our editorial process works. So like I mentioned, we have a writer's guide for all of our writers, which also includes a food photography guide, which is very specific to us. But that's an important kind of first step, that everybody reads that and gets onboarded properly. I will not work with somebody who's not willing to actually do a little bit of homework there. Mm-hmm. The other thing is they sign an agreement. Writers will sign an agreement that says that we own the intellectual property that they're creating for us, which is the recipe, which gives us the ability to then use it on in our own recipe books and stuff. I find writers, and I found most of my team on ProBlogger, the job board, or honestly Craigslist, or if you can find people on popular media sites. And in terms of the tools that we use, so there's a couple things. Where's my list here?
And I'm sure this is a tool answer, but I'm also curious, what do you use to figure out what keywords to go after? Or do you even think about keywords first? Do you just think about the content and then figure out?
We think about keywords. So, okay, so just real quick. So the tools that I use the most, I'd say, like, we have Yoast, like I mentioned, which helps us out significantly. We have Google Webmaster Tools, which is actually, I think, Google Search Console probably for a while now. And then SEMrush is the tool that I am in the most often, because SEMrush makes it very easy to find out what keywords you should target.
Right.
The very simple strategy is go put in your competitors, export a spreadsheet of all the keywords they're ranking for, sort that spreadsheet, and then be like, ooh, do I have content around this? Okay, I should probably do that because it's good traffic, and it's I can do a better piece of content than this person can. Our strategy heavily revolves around finding what's working and then doing better versions of that. And I want to be very clear about what I mean when I say that, which is that I'm not going and I'm plagiarizing people's shit. I'm saying you have a really good article on on bone broth, but I'm going to do a better one. My article is going to have a video. My article is going to have a better tasting recipe. My article is going to have more information about bone broth. My article is going to load faster. It's going to be better on people's phones, and so on and so forth. So I have a spreadsheet, basically an inventory, where I have a huge, like 5,000 row list of keywords that we could target and who's currently focused on those keywords. And then when Charisma is doing her editorial planning and meetings and stuff, she'll pull from that list occasionally, and also pull from trends and all that sort of stuff. So we do focus heavily on keywords. However, with recipes especially, there's a lot of trendy things that are not SEO focused. So we will definitely layer in content that's more specifically for social media. So, like, for example, unicorn bars. Like, I don't think people are searching for unicorn bars, but that's the type of shit that you see all over Facebook when it goes. So we did a recipe like that, for example, but it's more on the SEO side. So in terms of the actual, like, day-to-day operations, so we use Trello and Slack extensively. The way that we use Trello is we have 3 main boards. We have the, what's it called? The Post Ideas Trello board, which is, if you guys are familiar with Trello, essentially imagine a cork board or a whiteboard with lines drawn down every foot or so for a column, and then each column represents a list of tasks or list of things. So basically what happens is we have a list for each writer that is writing for us, and they will come into the Post Ideas Trello board and create a new card, which is essentially an item in the list, and send Charisma their ideas for content for the month. And Charisma will also send them her ideas. They'll discuss what ideas they want to work on, and then they'll come to an agreement about what content we're going to publish. And then then a new card is made on the next Trello board, which is our writer assignments board. So before I jump into that, are you guys following on this one?
Yeah, we actually started using Trello based on your recommendation. So we have been using Trello for our content marketing sort of strategy lately.
I can tell you that Trello is really good for a lot of things. It is the best at editorial management. I don't think there's another tool that does it quite as good as Trello does.
It's been great. My one wish about Trello was I wish there was some more automation to the things where if, like, I drag it from this board to this board, just automatically add my checklist in there for what needs to happen while it's on this board.
Yeah,
that's my only complaint about it. But other than that, I love it.
Yeah, there's definitely some hacks around that, but every time I tried to do that, I've screwed it all up. So I just let it handle it. So the second board is a writer assignments board, and that's where you've come to an agreement on the article, and now the writer, it's now an assignment for them. And so the same formatting on this board, which is that there is the board and then a list for each writer, and under each writer's name is a list of each article that they're currently in the works on. They then will submit the article to the Trello card, tag Charisma Editor-in-Chief, and then she'll go and do her edits and stuff, and then eventually they will say, okay, it's good, it's good. Let's move it on to getting it ready for publishing. So we then move that cart off the writer assignments board and move it to the content marketing the editing and QA board. And it's funny, you just said the thing like a templated checklist, and I'm like, holy shit, I could probably revamp this whole process with checklists. This QA section, I'm like, shit, I could do this in one list as opposed to 5. Anyway, so I'm like, guys, don't listen to me. I'm changing this all tomorrow.
That's cool.
I'm actually about to make a video of how I've set up our Trello board, and it's going to go on our blog probably next week or something. So I'll send that over to our workflow. Because ours is a modified version of your workflow, basically. So
yeah, and mine's going to be outdated tomorrow, I think. But anyway, no, not really. But so in the editing and QA board, there's a list for, essentially this is the board. It's like an assembly line. And so there is the, seems like the SEO aspects, making sure the title is good, making sure there's all the final like QA elements. Then there is, final edits. Then there is design aspects and getting all the design elements ready. Then, putting it into the ready for publishing, which is where it gets the final sign off from Charisma. And then finally it gets put into a ready for social promo list where our social media manager comes in and grabs it and then promotes it on Facebook or adds it to her Facebook schedule.
Got it.
And all of this stuff feeds into a master Google Calendar, which is the editorial calendar itself. We used to do that in Trello, but Trello does not do big calendars well. It was just super slow.
Okay. Sync it up to Google. Got it.
Yeah. It did sync up fine, but it just, when you go to Trello.com, it just loads super slow.
Right. That makes sense with 3 a day, every day, plus other shit that's going on.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So I've got 2 little rabbit holes I still want to go down with you.
Well, I'll be honest. You guys told me that an hour is your limit, but I'm telling you guys, I'll stay here as long as you need me. So
let's keep rolling. Let's get these rabbit holes covered.
My daughter actually is singing like in a choir tonight for a Christmas thing, so I do have a hard stop. But I mean, we could probably stretch an extra 20 minutes or so.
I mean, it's all right. That's only going to hurt her for the rest of her life.
That's all. But we're helping so many people right now. Yeah. Come on.
Okay, so you mentioned a few minutes ago there was an important point you wanted to make about email, and I don't know if we got to that point yet. So, did you want to touch on that?
Nah.
No? Okay.
Yeah,
not a big deal.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so this is a really important piece of this because I feel like I've talked about this quite a bit with direct response marketers. And they all kind of come back to me and they're like, this seems like a really roundabout way to make money. You know, they're like, why not just focus on sales funnel stuff? And my answer is usually, well, we also do that. But there is, aside from like, you know, the AdSense money, which in the grand scheme, I mean, I'm not complaining about it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's, you know, it's not as high. Like AdSense is a smaller percentage of our income than product stuff by a long shot, but also, it's free money. So I'm not complaining about that, but there is a very specific, very profitable direct response use for our content outside of all the stuff that we talked about. And again, like the next time we have this conversation, I'll have been digging into Facebook for a couple months and, we'll have some more specific direct response stuff there. But, the other way that we make bank from our content is through email marketing. And so the way that it works is I don't know what email marketing is like outside of the health space these days because I just follow all of my people. But one of the things that, you know, you guys I'm sure are aware of is like, you know, if you promote just offer after offer after offer to your list every freaking day, people are just going to be like, leave me the fuck alone. You know, I don't want to hear from you anymore. And a few years ago, you could just do that and it wasn't a big deal. But now there's like, and I mean, there was a lot of people a few years ago, but there's even more people now doing the same shit. So like, imagine you're on 100 different email lists and they're all emailing you the same stuff all the time. That's always offers. Like eventually you're just like, fuck this. So I'm very much, like I said, I'm a long-term approach type of person. And, so I would say, that using content has allowed us to email our list more frequently, make more money from those emails, and get less complaints and unsubscribes and still have really high engagement. So like I said, our list size is anywhere from 500 to 600,000. We rotate our inactive suppressions on every send. So like sometimes it'll be more, sometimes it'll be less. But we still are getting anywhere from 18 to 25% open rates on that size of a list. And unless I'm missing something somewhere, I'm pretty sure that's pretty solid in our world.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So here's what we do. Every email we send out, and this is something everybody should do anyway. Every email we send out, we track our subject line performance and email broadcast revenue. So we know what topics get the highest performance, but also the specific subject lines. And when I promote an offer, I always will have a couple of articles that I've mailed to my list before that I can use to promote that product. So let me just give a very specific example because I'm getting too vague here. So here's how it works. There is an offer called Unlock Your Hip Flexors by a guy named Rick Casselge, or Castle J, as I like to call him. That's not how you pronounce his name. It does super well for us. It's one of our higher converting offers we promote as an affiliate. And, I can do the solo for that. I can do a solo email promoting his product like this month, right? But then I'm probably not going to want to do that again for, I don't know, at least another month, if not a couple, like 2 or 3 months. I'm not going to send that solo out, no matter how much it made, because people are just like, okay, I heard about it already, right? Now, what instead I do is, it's funny, I'm talking about it like this. This might not be that mind-blowing for some people, but for me, this was like a big thing for us when we figured it out, is I'll take an article. So I have an article called 13 Stretches for Tight Hips that performs insanely well on social. I usually use social, like how it performs on Facebook, as a baseline for like, okay, I should try this as a lead article in my email because I know it'll perform well on Facebook, so it'll probably perform well as a subject line. So I have this article through 13 Stretches for Tight Hips, and I will use that article as a lead article with the subject line hip openers, because I've tested a shit ton of subject lines, but hip openers was the one that got me the most clicks. And so the email will look something like short introduction, like a sentence that says like, if you've got tight hips, then today's article is going to make sure to give you some sweet, sweet relief. Make sure to check it out. And then there's going to be a link to the article below. Now, right below that link is a couple of, lines, or just a line. And then I put the ad creative for Unlock Your Hip Flexors right there. And so essentially what ends up happening on this is that I will make something like, depending on how many times I've done this already, but usually on average, it's going to be about 80% of what I made for that solo email. So if I made 10 grand on a solo email, I'll likely make 8 grand as a sponsor. That will fluctuate too, depending on how tightly relevant the article lead that you're using is. Like, for example, if I used a dessert recipe and then the ad below it was for the hip flexors offer, that probably would not convert as well.
Got it.
So basically, like, I'm having these articles that are super relevant to the offer, using that article content as the subject line to get people who are interested in what that offer is going to be to open that email, not because there's an offer in there, but because there's content. And then some of those people will definitely click through and read the article. In fact, a shit ton of them will. But then a huge amount of them will also go and read the ad below and buy the thing. So we end up making about like 80% or so of what we would normally make with the solo. But we also get like 50% or less unsubscribes and complaints on that type of stuff, because someone opens up that email and sees that if it's just an ad, they're like, okay, I'm done and screw this guy, like he's promoting shit to me. Yeah. There's a piece of content in there. They're like, oh, they're either interested in the article or they're not. But at least it's like, here's an offering for you of value, as opposed to like, hey, come buy this thing I want you to.
Dude, that's pretty damn genius, because you're just opening the net wider for eyeballs to see that ad that they would have never probably clicked in. Now they're just like, they got their trust. Their trust a little bit more.
So in the email, you're linking to the article, and then below the article, there's actually an ad to an offer as well. Sure. So it's sort of like you used to be able to mail just to offers. You're still mailing to offers, but you're providing them with a link to content as well, which tends to piss less people off.
Yeah, I still will do affiliate solos, don't get me wrong, but those are much like, because email deliverability, this is also something that's a relevant concept too, is like, because email deliverability is getting tougher and tougher, this strategy has allowed us to still make good amount of money without burning our list out and pissing them off. But I still will do affiliate solos, but just only for like stuff that really kicks ass. And then, that's about it. But this is great because like when I find a home run offer, I can promote it like 7 times, or like at least 3 times as many as I would normally because I'll have all these other things to promote. So like I'm looking at right now, for example, I have a spreadsheet that's color coded. Thank you, Jill. That's color coded of all of the emails we've sent out, and basically like which subject lines did the best in terms of open rates, click rates, and then also revenue. So, we can, essentially I can go back and see, okay, this solo did really well. So I should go and this other article that's relevant to the solo did really well previously. So I should combine the two or just reuse it or something. But like, it's an amazingly effective thing to give you more excuses to email your list. And we email our list every day. And this allows us to really do that without suppressing response. And again, I think this is a big reason why I think our open rates are,
still so freaking awesome.
I love that. I mean, that's something we're going to probably implement starting tomorrow. Literally, like there's no reason not to.
Everyone should. Yeah.
I love that. So the other thing that I wanted to touch on before we wrap up here that we haven't really gotten into yet is off-page factors. And I know you mentioned that you're really big on focusing on the on-page factors using Yoast. Actually, quick question, total side topic, but when you use Yoast, do you recommend the upgraded version or is the free version just fine?
I think I bought the paid version just in case.
Oh, okay. So
I forget why, but I recall there was like one thing that I wanted, but for the most part, I was like, I feel like with that plugin, I was like, why do I need this? And then I was like, you know what? It's probably worth it. Let's just do it.
I mean, it's freaking badass.
That's what they're banking on, probably. It probably doesn't do anything else at all. But anyway, so off-page factors. You constantly hear people talking about backlinking, and you don't hear this stuff anymore because I don't even know if it's like a thing anymore. But like link pyramids and link wheels and all that kind of shit. Do you focus on any?
I haven't heard that phrase in a while. Last time I used the link wheel, I ended up fucking up one of my sites real bad for good.
So everybody should just go buy a whole bunch of .edu backlinks on Fiverr, right?
Yeah. Yes. I think the more shitty backlinks you can get, the better off you're going to be. Let's say that I'd say like the vast majority of our efforts are on site, and that's worked out really well for us. We don't do traditional link building, like. In theory, if I don't know if you guys have ever read the blog Backlinko, Brian Dean, he's got like the whole skyscraper method, which is like create a better piece of content. Well, I mean, it's kind of what we do minus the outreach part. So it's like create a better piece of content and then basically email 100 people that are relevant to get them to link back.
Yep.
I think we could implement that process into our business. I hate when I get those emails and I don't know. It's like a task that I could task out pretty easily, but I don't do a lot of link building in that traditional sense. We do have really good we do it in a more like natural way, which is like probably really obnoxious to hear for any SEO person listening. But we have good relationships with popular blogs in our space that we will guest post or syndicate our content on. So like we are able to do, for example, a guest post on Mark's Daily Apple. I think we do it once every month or two. And that's like a hyper relevant website for us. The backlinks we get from that are off the charts. Like it's amazing. So we focus on kind of like building that sort of thing where I kind of pimp out my writing staff and I'll create content for other people. I don't do the whole like just link to it for the sake of linking to it. It's more like I want to guest post content. I would imagine that we will improve on that strategy as we start to reach the upper limits of what on-site can do. I mean, we do get backlinks naturally too, like without doing any outreach because we're just a large platform and people pay attention to us. But I think we haven't needed to really make it a strong part of our process. We've focused way more on optimizing the on-site stuff. And I think maybe long-term we might add that in more, but more in like the way of like, this, I hate saying it like this because it's so fucking pretentious, but like more doing it the natural way that like Google wants, like the white hat shit, which is like do like a local scholarship, for example, that's like real and legit. It's like a couple grand, and it might be related to like agriculture or farming, and do some press about it and get some attention for us that way. Like stuff like that, kind of like bigger efforts as opposed to the typical, outreach stuff. And the guest posting thing too, that's kind of our biggest outreach. And that's been really good for us because that gets you traffic too. I mean, not a ton, but it definitely gets us traffic. And then the final thing, I don't know if this is really, I don't think there's any SEO benefit from this. We do get some traffic, is we syndicate our content. So there's a few big sites like Pop Sugar and stuff that will take our content and repurpose it, or basically put the exact same thing on their site and then give us a link back.
So there you go. That's similar to like what we were talking about earlier with Medium, and you're just targeting sites obviously that are that have eyeballs with your niche.
Yeah.
So that's
that are just as relevant to our audience as possible.
Sure.
So I mean, similar to what you guys are doing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fact that really the focus is on page. It's shit that you can control, and it's within your grasp. So maybe that's something. I mean, because we've done a lot of more the outside.
Well, I would say our approach to SEO has always been that repurposed approach. Take the content, put it on other sites, and then put a little a little blurb on it that says this was originally posted over here with a link back to the original article. That's been pretty much the extent of our backlinking strategy. And I don't even know if it's effective or not, but for us, we've always followed that similar approach of if you just create good content and then share it in the natural ways you'd share it on social media and our email list and stuff like that, then over time it just ranks. It just happens.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be very clear too, though, that it's not just about the quality of the content. It's also like it's I don't want to say highly technical because I think that's overstating it, but it's also very much a technical aspect of it, like the stuff we're talking about, the site speed, making it look good on mobile, making the formatting good, making it, you know what I mean? Like there's all this foundational stuff that you need to have. Like basically, long story short is like this, right? If my site loads slow, I could have a fucking backlink from the Google home. Actually, I shouldn't say that. That's probably not true. I'd imagine if I was on the homepage of Google, I'd be good to go. But let's just use that as a hyperbolic example here. If my site doesn't fucking load on your phone or your computer in a prompt period of time, I'll never rank no matter what links I have. So I think it's definitely a quality aspect of the content, length, and all that sort of stuff. And it's also the technical side of it is making sure it's accessible and usable. For sure.
Cool. Yeah, and one thing we did too that seemed to help with our rankings as well is we focused on the AMP stuff with Google, the accelerated mobile pages. There's a couple plugins that we had to use. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but you may know what I'm talking about with the AMP stuff.
Well, I know what it is, but we looked into it last year, and our SEO guy was kind of like, he was bearish on it because he wasn't certain that Google was going to keep it. But I guess since they've been around for a year, it might be worth revisiting. We do Facebook instant articles, which is obviously very similar, though not SEO related at all.
Right.
But I'm very curious. Yeah, I'd be curious to learn more about the AMP stuff because I bet when we're talking about site speed, those are the fastest pages. I'd be curious to see. That's something we should test on my side for sure.
Yeah, my only downfall with the AMP stuff is it kind of wreaks havoc on our Google Analytics because every single page that loads through AMP is like a different URL.
Domain,
but other than that, it does. We do get a lot of traffic to our. When I look in Google Analytics, I can see a lot of the AMP pages are the pages that are ranking.
Yeah, no, I mean that's not surprising to me. I got to tell you guys. I think like you could ignore 99% of what I said about SEO and just focus on site speed and you'll see the needle move for sure.
That's very sweet. That's great feedback. Yeah.
Well, cool.
Time to do that audit. Cool. Well, let's wrap it up, huh?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I mean, I'm sure we could probably do a round two if you're up for it.
I'm always down.
Yeah, I know you are.
We go way back, so we have a lot of history, and there's a lot of shit that we haven't covered. So,
dude, you always amaze me with just like the wealth of knowledge you have, and you're always applying it in some freaking creative ass way. And now this is the biggest operation I think I know you've run.
As far as I know, it's the biggest operation I've run too. Yeah,
it's man,
every day well, first off, I really appreciate that, and I would just say like every day is kind of a new adventure. I've never had a company this big before,
sure,
and so I pretty much am learning something new about how to run this thing properly every day in a various form of a panic attack. Yeah, it's great.
Just play more Ultimate Frisbee and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, I got that. Tonight's Ultimate Frisbee is at 9:20 p.m. Believe it or not.
Oh my god! Okay.
I still have more Frisbee to play today.
That's crazy.
So we do have like a few little wrap up questions that we ask everybody. Do you have any books that you find you recommend to people often? Maybe on the topics of SEO or content marketing, or just on business in general. Either way, we're always looking for new books.
I would tell you when it comes to like the hard skills in digital marketing, books are probably never going to give you that sort of info. Like there's probably no book on SEO that is timely, right? Because the day it comes out, first off, let's say it comes out January 1st. That book was finished like in April of that year. It's already out of date. So I would be more like looking at blogs, and I would say like the best blogs to read on content marketing and SEO stuff would be Brian Dean's Backlinko. I would say anything on Neil Patel's site, QuickSprout, or neilpatel.com. I know Sujin, who is Neil's cousin, is also really good at content marketing. He runs in the family, I guess. And his site, I think, is sujinpatel.com. Eventually, when someone asks me this question, I'll have my own place to send them to. But for now, I'm focused on the paleo world. In terms of books, though, the two books that I would recommend people read, one is a business book and one is not. Actually, and before those, I would say read everything Dan Kennedy's ever written. Do that first. Yeah. Like, set your head on right. But Traction is a business operations book that I love. And I know that's kind of a nerdy, boring subject for a lot of people, but there are a few books that have mapped out how to run a business properly that are actually applicable to a digital marketing operation. In fact, there is no other book like that. Like the E-Myth is about running a fucking muffin store and Joanne and her muffins or whatever. I have to read another book that's written in parable form. Like I'll kill myself for that. That would be the first thing I would recommend. And then another book that I just read that's not business related, but I think everybody should read anyway, because I don't get like, moved by things very often, but this book, Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown, was really fucking good, like really good. It's only 167 pages, so you guys, anybody can handle it. But it's about like this is another phrasing that I hate to say, but like it's about like being your authentic self, but like not by like pretentious Facebook people, like by someone who actually like understands the concept. It's fucking good. It's a really good book. It'll make you like ask a lot of questions about yourself. It's
cool.
It's
I am gonna get that tonight.
Very cool.
Looking it up right now.
Have you ever read the book Content Inc. by Joe Paluzzi?
I have it on my phone as a Kindle book. I know who it is. I have not really.
As far as content marketing goes, that's probably one of the better books I've read. As far as just sort of a good go-to, like you can flip open that book, flip to any chapter, and kind of get an idea of something to test.
Yeah, my impression was that it is a really good starting point. I thought it was good. I think I ended up not reading it too much because of what I was saying before is like, I was like, oh, I know this book is like multiple years old. So
right.
But I bet you he has some stuff in there. I usually like, instead of reading the book, I just would go to the guy's blog and the Content Marketing Institute and read stuff on there.
Makes sense. And if you ever want to write about content marketing or SEO or any of those topics, you're always welcome to write for the Evergreen Profits blog.
If you don't have an outlet, we can be that outlet for you. That's cool.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. I'll add it to my guest posting strategy.
There you go.
Very cool.
All right, man.
Well, where do you want to send people after listening to this? Where's the best place to connect with you? Obviously, everybody should check out Paleohacks if that's a topic that really interests you. But is there a place where you connect with people?
Facebook, I guess.
Facebook.
Yeah, I really wanted to get the domain daverants.com because that's all I do. I
like your rants.
Your rants are awesome, though. I think I've liked every single rant you posted.
I got really good feedback, so I was looking it up last night, but someone already owns daverants.com, and he has like these weird. He has like a really long post about the gender wage gap, and I was like, I can't buy this domain from this guy because people are going to look and be like, wow, Dave really hates women.
Oh, jeez.
So I wrote it, so
nah.
I have to find a new domain. So
what about David Rants or Sinick Rants?
Sinick Rants.
Ooh, Sinick Rants. That's not bad. That's not bad.
Doubt anyone has that.
Yeah, I'll come up with something.
All right, cool. Buy it before we publish this.
Yeah. Very cool.
All righty, man. Well, thank you so much. This is like a masterclass of content.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm going to call this episode like the playbook of content marketing and SEO or something like that, because this was
form.
like we covered a lot of ground.
Good. I'm glad. I like I said, guys, I'm incapable of doing this in a short process. And every I should probably have a disclaimer at the beginning of any time I get interviewed or something of like, this is not going to be like 5 tips for whatever. It's going to be like, I'm going to literally tell you everything I know about
5 hours
until you make me stop. Like, there's no reason for me not to share this. Like,
that's true.
I could actually give someone. I'm not going to do it, but I could actually give someone all of like our proprietary data, and I still don't think people can compete with us. I think, like,
dude, I just love the business model that and the mindset you have as a company to just do better work and just be better. And if anyone just approaches business in that fashion, not even just content, but business, I mean, there's so much data out there. You could see what works already, figure out how to do it better or different, whatever it might be. And
can I just say a cliche?
Yes.
We all have the same 24 hours in a day, right? If I'm going to fucking do something, I'm going to do that shit right. And I'm going to do it the best I can possibly do it, because I just don't see the point in half-assing stuff. And I don't think it benefits me. I don't think it benefits this audience that we have. Like, I'm trying to do shit the best possible way. And I'm like, I'm always looking at competition from like the really big players in the space, not like my direct competition, but like the people that are a couple tiers up. And that's something I would suggest to anybody too. Like, go for the fucking gold, shoot for the moon, whatever other metaphor you want to use there. Like, it's, we're all going to, the day is going to go by anyway. So you might as well do it.
Yeah.
Like, I just think, I think everybody should have more of the, let's do this best approach.
Hell yeah.
Love it.
Go back.
You're a very generous person and very generous with your time and your knowledge, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Sinick.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank
All
you.
right, man. We'll talk soon. All right. Thank you. And I hope you just enjoyed this episode you just listened to. Now, right now, before we sign off, I have a few things I would love for you to do. So the very first thing is to go find our guest on Facebook and tell them that you loved their episode with us. That's going to help them just feel good about themselves, but also it's going to spread the word a little bit more for us. So go find them on Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook, and go say that you love their episode and maybe one cool thing that you learned there. The second thing is to go to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast. Just look up Hustle and Flowchart and hit the subscribe button. And the very last thing, the third thing, is to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast and help us spread the word more. That's how more people are going to get this awesome knowledge, this cool podcast training, and a whole bunch of other cool free training that we give out at evergreenprofits.com. So that's about it. Go find them on Facebook, go subscribe on iTunes, and leave us a review. You would be amazing if you did that, but you're always amazing. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.